Ciphers of Time, Awakening the Legacy. Chapter 14, The Ethereal Kick. Manu paced back and forth in the dimly lit room, his mind swirling with wild theories. The stark walls echoed the thud of his footsteps, each step mirroring his growing panic. Shantanu sat hunched in a corner, cradling his head in his hands, a picture of desolation. They were trapped, and the air was heavy with the scent of mildew and mystery. Shantanu, do you have any idea who these people could be? Manu asked, pausing to glance at his brother. But Shantanu sat in silence, his gaze fixed on the cold floor beneath them. Sweat beaded on Manu's forehead as he contemplated their situation. Could it be possible that someone had become aware of their powers? They must want something from us, Manu muttered to himself. What if they want to conduct experiments on them? The thought sent a shiver down his spine. Shantanu's shoulders tensed at the sound of Manu's voice. But he remained silent, wrestling with an inner turmoil that seemed to consume him. Guilt gnawed at his conscience, his mind replaying the fleeting glimpse into the van that had brought them here. Manu, Shantanu finally whispered, lifting his hollow eyes to meet his brother's questioning stare. There was a weight to his voice, a burden of knowledge that he hesitated to share. It's my fault, Shantanu finally breathed out, a mixture of confession and defeat staining his tone. I should have been more cautious, more aware. Shantanu, whatever it is, we're in this together, Manu assured him, though a knot of worry formed in his own stomach. Listen, Manu said, his voice low and steady. I'm going to try something. It might be our only shot at getting out of here. Shantanu's gaze lifted, meeting Manu's with a flicker of hope. What are you planning? Vishwa taught me a way to control and use my city, remember? I've practiced, but I'm not fully in control yet. Manu could see the objections forming in Shantanu's eyes and raised his hand to stop them before they could start. Remain where you are and resist impulsive actions. Allow me to take control of the situation. Nodding reluctantly, Shantanu sat back against the wall, his body language speaking volumes of his desire to act, yet bound by his trust in Manu's judgment. Manu positioned himself at the center of the room, legs crossed, palms resting on his knees. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes, summoning the memory of Vishwa's guidance, and as he attempted to teleport himself out of the wooden cell's locked confines. The air in the room seemed to vibrate with anticipation as he mentally retraced each step. The focus on the breath, the envisioning of the destination, the willpower to break the physical tether. Minutes ticked by, each second a stretched eternity. Finally, with a sharp inhale, Manu's eyelids snapped open. His heart sank. Damn it, he cursed under his breath, taking in the sight of Shantanu, still as stone, right where he'd left him. The confines of the room remained unchanged, mocking his failed attempt. Let me try again, he muttered, more to himself than to Shantanu. With renewed determination, Manu shut out the world once more, delving deeper into the reservoirs of his mind. Time slipped away from him, an irrelevant concept within the meditation. When he opened his eyes next, a jolt of shock coursed through him. There was Shantanu, collapsed on the cold floor, motionless, while everything else stayed painfully the same. Shantanu! Manu scrambled over, his heart pounding against his ribs like a drum of war. He cradled his brother's head, searching for any sign of consciousness. No, no, no. What have I done? Panic clawed at his insides, the taste of dread bitter on his tongue. Please wake up, he whispered. Manu's hands trembled as he hovered them over Shantanu's inert form, the sudden realization hitting him like a punch to the gut. It wasn't his own power that had failed. It was Shantanu's impulsiveness that had taken charge. His brother must have activated his own city in a desperate attempt to intervene. Always jumping into the fray without thinking, Manu muttered, his voice laced with frustration and concern. He knew all too well how Shantanu's rashness could lead them into dire situations. As he contemplated their grim situation, a loud crash echoed through the room. The door burst open, revealing the contour of the man who earlier had brought them water. But the voice that followed chilled Manu to the bone. Brother, come. Let's get out of here. It's me, Shantanu. Manu felt a twinge of sympathy towards the unmoving figure on the ground, in intense anger towards the soul inhabiting the body of the guard. He glanced at the guard with impatience, his emotions bubbling to the surface. "Are you mad?" Manu's voice rose in a mix of anger and relief, even as the absurdity of the situation washed over him. "Why don't you think before doing something, Shantanu? Do you really want to leave your body here in this cell and fly away? Or were you thinking that we can escape carrying it with us?" The imposter Shantanu paused mid-stride, turning back with a sheepish expression that seemed so characteristic of his brother. Manu shook his head, a wry smile fighting against his lips. Even in the face of danger, Shantanu's audacity knew no bounds. The room's door swung open abruptly, flooding the dim space with an eerie light. A chilling figure loomed in the doorway, its silhouette casting a long, ominous shadow across the barren floor. The old man's appearance was otherworldly, his presence commanding immediate attention. A divine glow surrounded him, accentuating the edges of his long white beard exuding an ethereal aura. In a swift and effortless motion, he lifted his leg to an impractical height, directly targeting the possessed Shantanu's chest. The kick was executed with such precision and power that it felt like a divine decree, its thunderous impact seeming to fracture the very fabric of its existence. The kick had an immediate and cosmic effect. Shantanu's soul was suddenly released from the body it had taken over, like a ghostly comet shooting back to its original home. The stranger, now vacant of the foreign essence, stumbled backward in astonishment. Eyes wide with shock, he scanned the room, desperately trying to piece together the fragmented moments leading to his unexpected arrival and the authoritative figure before him. On the other side of this mystical exchange, Shantanu's form jerked violently to life, gasping for air as though emerging from a watery grave. His eyes snapped open, mirroring the terror that had gripped his soul just moments ago. The sensation of the spiritual kick lingered, an echo of fear that resonated in his bones. Manu's chest heaved with a mixture of fear and defiance as he steadied himself against the cold stone wall of the dimly lit room. His heart raced, adrenaline coursing through his veins after witnessing the otherworldly kick that had liberated his brother's soul. The air felt thick with unspoken power, and he knew this was the moment to speak up. "Stop!" Manu's voice cut through the silence. "What is all this? Who are you, and why are you doing this to us?" He stepped forward, a protective instinct for Shantanu fueling his courage. "If there's anything done wrong by us, let us know how we can sort it out." His gaze never wavered from the white-bearded man's piercing eyes. "If there is any debt made by Shantanu, I will take the responsibility, and I assure you that I can pay you back along with the interest." The bearded boss regarded Manu with a peculiar expression, his eyes narrowing slightly as if weighing the sincerity of Manu's words. A hint of amusement flickered there before being quickly veiled by gravity. "After all you have seen and experienced in the last few months, do you really think this is all about money?" His voice, deep and resonant, reverberated off the walls, carrying with it an undertone of wisdom that seemed to mock the very notion of worldly debts. "Oh dear Manu, please wake up. And please rest assured, we are not your enemies. We would never harm you, but rather protect you from the forces of evil." The bearded man's expression softened, concern crossing his features. "Everything will be explained to you in due time, but first please have some food and regain your strength." With those final words, he turned on his heel and strode from the room. The door remained open, revealing the stern faces of guards positioned just beyond the threshold. Their silent vigil a clear message. Freedom was still far beyond reach. Throughout the exchange, Shantanu had remained unusually quiet, his gaze locked on a stranger in the corner of the room, a person completely covered in the black fabric, only revealing their eyes. Those eyes followed the boss with an unwavering stare, glinting with an unreadable emotion. As the boss exited, the cloaked figure hesitated, then followed suit, moving with a grace that seemed incongruent with the situation. As the boss passed through the doorway, the last glimpse of those piercing eyes of the stranger vanished into the dim corridor outside. Manu exhaled slowly, releasing a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Despite the fear gripping him, an ember of hope kindled within his chest. Though the path forward was shrouded in mystery, the demeanor of old man calmed his nerves a bit. Manu reached out, his hand trembling as he placed it on Shantanu's slumped shoulder. Silently, he beckoned his brother to lift his gaze, to share in the strength that had carried them through countless trials before. The dim light of the room threw shadows across his face, deepening the lines of worry and resolve etched there. Shantanu, Manu's voice was steady, a stark contrast to the tremors that shook his sibling's frame. Remember our pledge from the start of the day. No matter the situation, we promise to face it together, head on. For a moment, silence enveloped them, a brief respite from their spiraling thoughts. Then, as if the dam of composure had broken, Shantanu's emotions surged forth, a tide of anguish and guilt. Brother, it's Malini! The name spilled from his lips like an accusation against himself, weighted with betrayal. Malini, Manu echoed, confusion knitting his brows together. A cold sensation clawed at his gut, the feeling one gets when a trusted pillar begins to crumble. Yes, Malini, Shantanu replied, his voice cracking, betrayal evident on his tear-streaked face. In the morning, she sat in the driver's seat of the van. He gestured vaguely towards the open door, as if the vehicle might be lurking just beyond the guard's watchful eyes. I can't erase her eyes from my mind, the way they looked at us, devoid of the warmth I knew. She lured us into this trap. Shantanu's shoulders heaved with the weight of his revelation. It's all my fault. The brothers sat in silence, the echo of the confession reverberating around the sparse room. Manu's mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of a puzzle that seemed to grow more complex with each passing moment. Malini, the woman Shantanu adored, now cast a shadow over their grim reality, her actions having played a significant role in their current predicament. Manu's fist clenched involuntarily as the words sank in, his pulse hammering in his ears with a mix of rage and disbelief. Malini, Manu repeated, the shock rendering his voice to a hoarse whisper. He watched Shantanu's face crumble, the rawness of his distress cutting through Manu's initial flare of anger. It was not just a name. It was a dream shattered, a future unmade. Only hours ago, Shantanu had been brimming with hope, speaking of love. When we return, I'll ask her to marry me, he had declared, confidence lacing his words. I can't imagine a life without Malini by my side. Now, the light that had once danced in Shantanu's eyes was extinguished, replaced by the shadow of regret. Shantanu, Manu said softly, his own emotions simmering beneath the surface, as he reached out and placed a hand on his brother's trembling shoulder. You loved her. You trusted her. How could you have known? Let's not lose ourselves in what's been done. His voice steadier now, imbued with resolve. We face this together, remember? We'll find our way back, out of this darkness. Shantanu's breath hitched, his eyes glistening with unshed tears that spoke of gratitude and remorse intertwined. And in that quiet cell, amidst the chaos that unfurled beyond its walls, the brothers sat united, an unspoken vow to weather the storm side by side.